3. And let the big dog hunt. Hello again, everybody. I'm Joe Staszak. Time for another episode of Kallas Remarks with yours truly and my man right over there, Steve Kallas. Steven, how are you, my friend?
All good, Joe. Great to be with you as always.
You too. Got a lot to get through today. You know, with these $250 million contracts that like A-Rod started with the Rangers back in the day. I never thought these guys were actually worth any of this money, but one guy I thought was worth every penny was Max Scherzer for the Nationals, for what he has done there and winning a world championship and just the no-hitters and whatnot. Big trade. And the rich get richer. It seems like the Dodgers are always trying to acquire these elite starting pitchers. And it happened. Matt Scherzer is now a Dodger. What did you think of that move, along with some of the other crazy moves that happened at the deadline?
Well, it's funny because Scherzer painted his signing the big contract and winning a World Series as a total positive, which, you know, again, I guess if you get one nowadays, Joe, it's so hard to win one. If you get one, it's a success. But now he goes to the Dodgers where he has a really good chance. I mean, I think they were pretty much the favorites all year. I know they're a little behind the Giants, but they got Trey Turner also.
They did.
And those are two, you know, Washington's waving the white flag. I mean, they got rid of so many people. But I think, look, Scherzer's still a top three Cy Young Award winner. He's a Hall of Famer. And he's just been put back right into a pennant race where he's, you know, used to it, frankly. So obviously what you said, the rich get richer. I'm sure we'll talk about the Yankees in a minute. But the Dodgers, if they weren't the favorites yesterday, they are the favorites today. But I know they were the big favorites at the beginning of the year. You know, who knows what's going to happen with Trevor Bauer and that whole situation. But I think they're back on top, even though they're not in first place right now.
Crazy. What about some of the other moves that happened? You look at a team like the Phillies. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. They are the most average team. I think they're 500 at home, 500 against good teams, 500 against bad teams. They didn't do a whole lot. Any other teams make some splashes that you thought, hey, that's going to put them in a different category?
Well, the Yankees had no left-handed power. They had 22 homers from all lefties on their team, and they go get Joey Gallo from Texas. He's got 25 homers. And then they get Rizzo from the Cubs, and in his first game, you know, he hits a 440-foot homer, which is probably about 130 feet farther than you have to hit it at Yankee Stadium to hit a homer. So you drop those two power hitters in the lineup. You can split up all the righties, Judge, Stanton, LeMahieu, Judge. Torres is hitting better now. So they've got a really good lineup now. Still not sure about their bullpen. Still not sure. Their starting pitching has been good. So I think they're right back in it. But when I say right back in it, I mean for the second wild card. Because the Rays and the Red Sox are fighting. And they're still like, I want to say, I don't know, 4 or 5 games ahead of maybe more ahead of the Yankees. The Athletics, I think, are the team everybody's trying to catch. And the Yankees and other teams are like, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 games behind them. But the Yankees now have a potent offense. We thought they had a potent offense before. They didn't because they had no solid lefty power. And now they got not 1 or 2. I think Rizzo's home run was his 15th. As I said, you know, Gallo has 25, more than the whole Yankee lefties combined, and we're going into August. So that's pretty incredible. So then they made some good noise. The Mets, you know, I thought that division would be close, as did you. I didn't think everybody would be so mediocre. The Phillies are like around 500, but they're only a few games behind the Mets. The Mets did get Javi Baez, you know, the Cubs also waving the white flag, right? Mm-hmm. Chris Bryant, I think, went to the Giants, I want to say, just last minute. And Javi Baez said, yeah, I'll come to the Mets. The only person in the world I wouldn't play shortstop for is Lindor, who, of course, is the $341 million New York Mets shortstop, who's kind of been up and down this year. He's playing better, but now he's on the injured list. So Baez is going to the Mets. He's going to play short, and when his buddy comes back, then he'll move to second. So, you know, that's a good pickup for the Mets, frankly. So I think a lot of teams made a lot of moves. It's the old, are you buyers, are you sellers? But, to see a guy like a Scherzer go at the deadline, I think I saw a thing, and Trey also was an all-star. I think it was like the first time a team had traded 2 all-stars after the all-star break, or maybe that another team had gotten, and it's the Dodgers, had gotten 2 all-stars after the all-star break. So the arrow's pointing up for the Dodgers. I still think the Yankees have a lot of work to do. I think the Mets might win the NL East by default. I thought it would be better. I thought the Phillies would be better. I thought Washington would be better. We both thought Miami would drop back. They made the playoffs last year, you'll remember, but they really did drop back this year. And Atlanta, they lose Acuna. They traded for like 3 different outfielders. Adam Duvall is one of them, hoping something will stick. But I think their playoff chances left when Acuna, fell down, and I think he tore his ACL, right? I know he's done for the season, Ronald Acuna. He's a great player.
Great player.
And, so I think the Mets might win by default. But if you're an anti-Met person or a Phillies fan, you're like, well, they just came out and said DeGrom has more stiffness or he had a setback, and now it looks like he won't pitch till September. Well, that's a whole month from now. And it'll be more interesting at the end of the year when we talk about Cy Young. DeGrom, when healthy, is far and away the best pitcher in baseball. His stats this year are incredible. But what, is he going to win 10 games? I know Felix Hernandez, 13-12, changed the world, as did analytics. And DeGrom hasn't had big win totals. I'll say it again. He might be the guy with the lowest win total ever to get into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's going to win 125 games. He's only halfway. He's not even halfway there. So it's a lot going on, a lot of interesting things happening. But, I just think the Dodgers got richer, and they're the Dodgers. The Yankees got richer, but I don't view them to be the Yankees. They have not been very good this year. But they do have a chance, I think, for the second wild card. Unlikely for the AL East. But as you said, the rich get richer.
Unbelievable. The money the Dodgers have put into that starting lineup. How's Trevor Bauer doing? Do you know anything about him?
I don't. I know he had a court appearance, and I think his defenses, everything was consensual. I thought he was not playing. I don't think he's been back. I certainly have not heard of him pitching.
No, I don't. That was kind of odd. And I'm not accusing, nothing here is accusatory, but if she gets beat up the first time, why is she going back for another round? I'm just curious. Like she claims that all this happened the first time, and he didn't really deny it. He's like, yeah, it was a little rough, but it was consensual. I'm like, first of all, why is Trevor Bauer online trolling for females? I think he could probably do well just walking outside of his house. I don't know, just me.
Well, as long as he's carrying a copy of his contract, he'll do well. But I think, I hate to say it, it's a classic he said, she said, but I assume that part of the evidence on his behalf was, hold it now. This happened once, and she texted me and came back. But it does sound, again, I'm no expert on this stuff, but it sounds like Bauer went way over the line. But if she's saying, I like it like this, I mean, that's going to be the ultimate he said, she said. So
right.
It's a very strange situation, but the actual accusations are horrific. And it's hard to believe that a woman would really want that done to her, but you just don't know. You just don't know.
It's just a shame. He's a little off the wall, or a lot off the wall, but I do like his game. But we shall see. But the Dodgers, like you said, the odds-on favorite probably to win another World Series at this point. Let's talk a little NBA because the draft came and went. Guy named Cunningham got drafted first. I guess they called it kind of a target-rich draft. There weren't a lot of big names that popped out, like the kid that plays for the Pelicans that went to Duke and guys like that. But so the draft came and went. But the big story was the Lakers picking up Russell Westbrook. Now they have a big three. What do you think? How does he fit with the Lakers?
Well, whenever we talk about any draft, what do we say? Wake me up in 3 years.
Yeah, right.
But specifically with the Lakers, I think they have to match the big three of the Nets, who were injured. Milwaukee gets all the credit in the world. All you can do is play who showed up. They won a couple of big games without their superstar.
Big games.
And Phoenix had their own injuries, plus and minus. So I think this is their big three. Now, I will say this. In the world of three-point shooting, in the world of analytics, in the world of throw it to AD down low, or even LeBron going to the basket and have 4 3-point shooters around, they don't have 4 or even 3 with Russell Westbrook there. As great as he is, and he is great, he can't shoot. He's not a shooter.
Not a shooter.
And I can see if they drop it into the post to Davis, whoever's guarding Westbrook, wherever he is going to be the guy to run 5, 10, 25 feet to go double Davis or double LeBron. And they're going to throw it out to Westbrook because he's wide open. And even as a standalone, his numbers aren't great. Even as a standalone three-point shooter, he's okay. But, some days he has it, some days he doesn't. But the energy, the playmaking, I'm going to be interested to see what kind of rebounder he is on a team with LeBron and Anthony Davis. And I don't think those guys are going to box out and let them get rebounds on foul shots like they did at OKC. Not trying to make fun of them, just telling you nobody ever did it for Oscar. That's all I'll say. But they have, look, their three is LeBron, who's incredible, is AD, who's incredible, and is Westbrook, who's incredible, except he can't make a three. And the Nets, those three guys can make threes. We're going to go back to, again, tell me who's healthy between those two teams at the end of the year. Tell me who's healthy, and I'll tell you who I like if they meet in the NBA Finals. It's all about health. And that did kind of shake out this year with the miraculous Antetokounmpo rebound from that knee that bent the wrong way, the other way. And he was playing a few days later. I mean, that was incredible. So I don't think Phoenix gets back next year. Chris Paul's a year older. He did not play well in the finals.
No.
I don't know that Milwaukee gets back. Again, you tell me the Nets are healthy. I don't think Milwaukee was lucky Kevin Durant has big feet, because that's how they beat him. I'm sorry. That's how they beat him. Give him credit. But there was no Kyrie. Harden was playing on one leg. Give him credit.
Yeah.
But they played really against one. They didn't play against the big three or even the big two. They beat a big 1.5.
Yeah.
And they still almost won.
So
I think that's the biggest thing in the draft. I will say this. I really like this Evan Mobley kid from USC. Now, he's a 7-footer. But they're actually saying he could be that kind of big man today. He can step back and make threes. I'm not sure about that. He played 1 year at USC and was great. I think he's the first guy ever to be the player of the year. This is in the Pac-12. I can't tell you how many teams are in the Pac-12 because I don't know how it works anymore, Joe.
Right.
Once upon a time, the Pac-10 had 10.
That's what it was supposed to be.
But he's the first player ever to win Player of the Year in the conference, Defensive Player of the Year, and here's the wild card, Freshman of the Year, because when Alcindor and Walton and those guys played, they couldn't play as freshmen.
Right.
So I don't know even if that's a rigged stat. But I like him. He's a 7-footer. He only shot 30% from three in college. So I'm not sure when people say, oh, he's a big man who can make threes. I'm not sure about that.
Right.
But I like him. I think he's going to, now look, he's going to the Cavaliers, and our guy Rick Morris was all excited, but the Cavaliers are far, far away. And so that's the other thing you got to look at, really. How far away are these guys? I think there's 2 or 3 really. I like the Suggs guy from Gonzaga. Is that your team, Gonzaga there?
Yeah.
But he went down to number 5 to Orlando, and the Scotty Barnes was picked over him at number 4, which I didn't understand at all. Suggs is really good, and I'm not talking about the fling at 3-pointer to win the Final Four game. That's incredible, but you don't base your draft pick on that kind of stuff. But Suggs is a complete player. So I like Cunningham, Mobley, and Suggs. My problem is I didn't watch a lot of G League, and you had a couple of high picks from the G League. And that's going to be the first experiment, I think, of the G League skipping college. You know, they paid them like, I don't know what it was, from 150 up to 400 or 500 maybe. They got good money, and you can argue they're playing better competition maybe than college, but nobody really watched them. I mean, the scouts did, but I have question marks about the G League guys. It'll be interesting this year to see how they do, and then that might translate to how we look at things next year. But I do like a few of the guys, but I think you're right. No Zion Williamson. There's no Ja Morant. There's no, oh my goodness, these guys are going to be stars. And they became stars. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's a process. I want to talk a little football. Because
one more thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One more thing on the Lakers, because we didn't talk about who they gave up. They gave up Kyle Kuzma. They gave up a bunch of guys. Kentavious Pope. They say his name. I don't even know. He's a good three-point shooter. They gave up a bunch of guys. They literally have 4 guys who have contracts now. Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook is making more than both of them. The 3 combined are at like 120 million. And the only other guy they have under contract for next year is Marc Gasol at 2.7 million. So they have 4 guys. They got to go out and get like 8-10 guys.
Right, to fill the roster.
And the question is, and I think it'll be answered well, you're an aging veteran. You're only going to get 5 million or whatever you're going to get. But you step in there, you automatically have a chance to win a title. I think a lot of guys are going to go for that at the end of their career. I think their roster will fill up pretty well, because all these older guys who have made a ton of money and are still good players are going to say, they need 10 guys. Here I am.
Right.
I'll play for 5 million.
Sure.
So that's the other side. Kentavious Caldwell Pope is who I was thinking of.
Right. I remember.
He can shoot threes as well.
Sure.
So it'll be fascinating, but it's going to be big 3 against big 3. And I want to revise my Clippers v Nets now, because I'm not sure who I would pick to make the finals. Again, health will be the deciding factor to me, as it was this year to a large degree.
Right, and then it all fell apart. Let's talk a little bit about football. Every team now is in camp. Every team is present and accounted for to a degree. I just by accident happened to be at home the other day, and I was flipping around. I had ESPN on, kind of in the background. I was working on one of my other businesses, and they said, well, the Packers just wrapped up their first day of camp, and coming to the podium, Aaron Rodgers. I'm like, I got lucky. I didn't even know he was speaking today. And man, it was worth every penny, even though I didn't pay anything for it, but it was worth to watch that press conference, because I thought he did himself. He was very honest. You don't hear that a lot. A lot of that stuff, is kept behind closed doors. His first answer was 6 minutes. And he prepared because he had a lot of names of the guys that he talked to already. He said, I went to these guys just to make sure, and he was talking about to see how they were treated on the way out the door, some of his former teammates. And he really got into it. He kind of got up pretty much. He complimented them too, and he appreciated all the money they paid him in 17 years, 14th year as a starter. But he got into it a little bit. He did say that 4th and 8 play had nothing. He's nothing against Matt LaFleur. Said he's had a blast with him. Blah blah blah. But he's had some issues with management. He let it fly on the other day. What'd you think?
It sounds like they've come to an agreement that he's going to play this year, and I guess after that he'll be gone. But they put up a thing on ESPN that it was like, first round wide receiver draft picks, how many catches they had from Aaron Rodgers over his entire career, and the entire number was 52. And I'm sure his point being, you didn't get me the help I needed. Right. You wouldn't get guys in the first round that would make me an even better player than I already am. So he's right. In today's world, look at the NBA, my goodness. In today's world, these guys should have some input, especially as he's getting to the end of his career. I think maybe he really thought they could have won last year. By the time the playoffs came around, Johnny Kallas, Tampa Bay Bucks, and he was right. But it couldn't have been a shock that they beat the Packers in Green Bay. And guess what? Tampa Bay is going to be better this year. So it won't be a shock if they wind up playing next year, but I think it'll be in Tampa Bay. And that'll be, we're looking at the Tampa Bay schedule the way we used to look at the Patriots schedule. And we're like, in a 17-game season, if they win less than 14 games, assuming they have to play them all, meaning something, which I think it will with only one bye. We think if they lose under 14 games, it'll be surprising.
Right.
So I don't know where Rodgers goes. That's the problem. And I wonder if he thinks he's losing another year, because where do you put the Packers right now? At the beginning, they were like third or fourth favorites to win the Super Bowl for this coming season after last year. They were even higher than the Bucs, which made no sense because the Bucs beat them in Green Bay. And oh, by the way, the Bucs won the Super Bowl.
Right.
So that's ridiculous. But it's got to be Kansas City and the Bucs. They're up here. You can tell me whoever you want afterwards. The Rams with Matthew Stafford, 0-3 in the playoffs. Matthew Stafford never won a playoff game. Matthew Stafford, he's real good. He doesn't get them, in my view, equal to above the Chiefs or the Bucs. And then there's the Packers. We would talk about the Ravens every year. I picked them one year, but Lamar Jackson has COVID for the second time, as does Gus Edwards. Now, obviously, it's only July going into August, so that may not matter. But those would be the next two teams for me, the Packers and the Ravens. But I don't see them getting close to the Chiefs and the Bucs, again, based on health. If everybody plays out the way it is, the Chiefs have a much better line now. So if you put them into the Super Bowl next year, who do you like? Everyone's going to say, oh, the Chiefs have a better line. I'm saying the Bucs are going to be better than they were last year because they had no training camp. They had no exhibition games. And really, I think Brady said later, the first 6-7 games were really kind of an exhibition season for them. And then once it started clicking on all cylinders, get out of the way, they couldn't be beat. I think they're better this year. And the Chiefs are probably better than they were in the Super Bowl because they got the guy Joe Tooney, the best guard in football from the Patriots. They got 2 new tackles. They got the guy who was a doctor coming back, right? Wasn't he an offensive lineman? Mm-hmm. The guy went up to Canada and worked, and God bless him for doing that, but he's back. So they are going to be much better as well. But I think that just makes them way ahead of the rest of the NFL right now. Again, end of July as we go into August. So as for Rodgers, I think he sees his window closing. I don't think he thinks he's going to play till 43 at the level of Brady. But because of a Brady, these older quarterbacks now think, I got another 2 or 3 more years. So it sounds like they kind of made peace. He said, they tried to throw some money at me. I don't want money. I want to win. Aaron Rodgers, we can't count how much money he has. So I think he's kind of resigned to the fact that he's going to play this year. And I guess if you're a Green Bay fan, you give the coach and the general manager saying, he's coming back. He's our guy. We're not trading him. He's coming back. He's our guy. And now he's coming back and he's their guy.
Yeah.
So they'll be good, but I don't know if they'll be good enough. And I think Rodgers wants to win one more at least, obviously. Where can he go? We talked about the Bears. And if you drop him on the Bears, maybe. But you don't know. That's the problem.
Bears,
neither does Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's correct. Bears, jumped up 9 spots to take the kid from Ohio State. They seem to be going in a different direction. I don't know, New Orleans, I'm not sure what they're doing. I do have to mention before we get out of here, same old, and Carson Wentz continues to haunt Eagles fans because they need him to play well this year to get that first-round pick back. And he has a serious foot injury, apparently, that he suffered after Thursday's practice. He's out indefinitely. The coach doesn't want to say that it's season ending yet, but the fact that he even mentioned it, I'm like, oh, my goodness. They have Jacob Eason is one of their backups, and Sam Ellinger is the other backup. Any chance they take a flyer on one Nick Foles and bring him over there to Indianapolis to maybe, start in place of Carson Wentz, if that's the case, because they didn't sign Jacoby Brissett?
Well, if they go to Carson Wentz and say that, I think he's going to go, really? But I think the reason they won't, seriously, I think the reason they won't is because Reich understands Wentz. He understands his psyche. No matter what Wentz says, we all know what happened in Philly after Nick Foles came in and won the Super Bowl. There's not a statue of Carson Wentz outside. There's not a Philly special suggested by Carson Wentz. That's the history of Philadelphia and the history of Wentz and Foles. So even though on the field that might be a good decision, I think mentally for Wentz, you want him. He's got 3 more years on that big contract, or 4. I'm not even sure. But you're looking at this guy to play for you for 3. Yeah, so you're looking for him to be good for 3 years, and that's where we are.
It's just crazy because if I'm Frank Reich and Wentz is out for the season, if he was still starting and coming back, I could see why you wouldn't tinker with Foles. But if he's out for a season, I need a viable starting quarterback because my team is kind of there. They won, I think, 11 games last year, and I think they lost to the Bills in the playoffs, or maybe they won a playoff game, but I don't know, but it's just crazy to even think that to put Foles in the same category. Someone brought that up to me today, and I said, you know what? That's an interesting thought. I'm going to bring it up on my pocket. See what Steve says, because we had some fun talking about
Joe, I agree with you if he's gone for the season. I agree with you.
Okay, so
but if it's anything else,
I would not.
He's looking over his shoulder.
Right.
Okay, we're in agreement.
We're on the same page. All right, and finally, not many people have spoken out about this. The Olympics, I used to be a real big fan. I still watch it, casually. I saw the U.S., tank to France last week, and, they'll be fine. And they beat the Iranians by like 100. Simone Biles, my kids love Simone Biles, and I think she's fantastic. And she's, the 99 of her sport. And something happened this past week that I just couldn't. I'm like looking around, waiting for anyone else. Am I not hearing this correctly? Did she just pull out? She better have a compound fracture. Does she have a compound fracture? No. What's the problem? She pulled out, said she was vulnerable and mental health protection. And like you said before in our pre-production, that no one wants to really touch this because, these days everyone's afraid. If I was on the radio, I would go in with both clips filled to the hilt today for Simone Biles. I'll let you go first on what you think of the situation, what the repercussions of it.
Well, we talked about a month ago about July 1st, name, image, likeness, NCAA, how it literally changed college athletics overnight. A sea change in college athletics. All these kids can make money now on NIL. So too, I think, with first Osaka in tennis. Now that was like for post-tennis match press conferences, not play on the tennis court. And Simone Biles, who is now backed out of, I think, just about everything except maybe 2 individuals. Next week she has to decide. I'd be surprised if she comes back. Both citing mental health. And look, mental health in America, we've seen it through COVID and now all these mass shootings. Mental health is so crazy. We have to spend much more time, effort, and money on mental health. When someone like Simone Biles does it at this level, and she's the greatest gymnast by miles, according to everyone. One guy I know who's an expert said she could show up, be 75, 80% of what she is and still win gold medals. That's how far ahead of everyone else she is. The problem, I think, is if this happened 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, what would happen? If it was in like men's football, what would happen? The coach would go ballistic. The coach would say, get your butt out there. I don't care, blah, 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 blah. I don't care, get out there.
Yeah.
Woody Hayes, although that was the other team. That's how it was. That's how it was forever. And I think overnight she's changed the conversation. She's getting incredible support. And look, I will say this to defend her. When you watch, so she put up on Instagram some of her practice on the uneven bars, the uneven parallel bars, and she missed and took a couple of tremendous falls. And when you practice, you can have incredibly soft mats, but in the Olympic Games, it's not. So she's right. when she says, I want to avoid injury, because this isn't a baseball game or even a football game where you could get hurt playing baseball or football. But in gymnastics, you literally do it to yourself if you miss the bar. And they showed a few where she missed the bar, and you're like, oh my goodness. So I think now what the sea change is we're going to look even more at mental health than we have in the past. And we've been under-reporting or under-dealing with mental health for decades, if not centuries. Having said all of that, my concern is now, you've now given an excuse to millions and millions of athletes all over the world, high school, college, semi-pro, minor leagues, pro, whatever. And I'm just afraid that's going to creep into your mind as an athlete who not only doesn't have Simone Biles' skill, but does not even have her mental strength, which has been tested here, which has made her literally, leave the Olympic Games. And we'll see if she comes back for the last two. I don't think she will. It'll be fascinating if she does, of course. But I'm afraid that that's going to now creep into people's minds as an option. You and I are obviously much older than her, but certainly throughout my life, high school, D1 baseball, semi-pro baseball, high level of basketball, bowling, it would never enter my mind to say, yeah, I'm not going to do that today. And if it did ever enter my mind, my coaches, who Brenda Malone, who coached in the NBA for 30 years, my dad was a minor league player. It would not, now I'm talking way back now, 70s, 80s, that wouldn't have flown for 10 seconds. And I can tell you, it never even entered my mind, even if I was, like I told you, I faced John Candelaria in high school. He's a 6'7" lefty throwing 90 with a big hook. I'm 5'7", 130 pounds. And I'm like, yikes. But the notion that I wouldn't go up and face him and do the best I can, that was never a notion. I'm just afraid now that it's going to creep into people's minds, and suddenly you might have a lot of people dropping out because of mental health. Now, that might be a good thing, Joe. I don't know. Every case is going to be individual. But I think you have to support her in the fact that in gymnastics specifically, you can really get hurt.
You can.
But between Osaka and Biles, I think almost like NIL, they've changed the perception of mental health, the discussion on mental health, literally in a month? And I think that's a good thing. I don't know what the result of it is going to be, but you couldn't have two higher. I mean, they're two of the greatest female athletes on the planet. They might be the two greatest. Certainly Biles in her craft, and Osaka has risen to number one. I assume she's dropping down now. And she also lost in the Olympics in the third round, which was very surprising. Although in the next breath, I'll say Djokovic lost also. And now supposedly he has some kind of shoulder injury. So I don't know if that's an after the fact. He dropped out. He lost in singles. I think he lost in doubles, and he dropped out of mixed doubles with a shoulder injury. So I'm not trying to analogize the two. I'm not. But I think this is the sea change in the way we look at mental health across all sports and across all ages from high school on up. That's my opinion. How about you?
Well, you mentioned something that I'm going to pull back a little bit because I don't like to, even when I analyze football games, I don't always, you have to be careful at times when people just kind of fly off the handle. I don't know what was said in the huddle. I don't know what was said in the sidelines. I don't know where the receiver was supposed to be, or you know what I'm saying? Like, so I have to be careful, like, who I'm blaming, even though the play has a lot of blame, there's a lot of blame to go around. It's a dangerous sport. She, to me, on the vault, where she did a little hop, she seemed a little off for whatever reason. I don't know what's in her head, and I don't know physically what's going on. I don't have all the information, but on the surface as a snapshot, to me, when you're the 99 of your sport and have been for a very long time, I would think that one of the reasons is that you're mentally tougher than, it's like 12. Brady's mentally tougher than everybody else. He rarely wilts. The only time that he didn't do it was when Brandon Graham hit him and fumbled the ball. It wasn't really his fault in the Eagles Super Bowl, but so I don't exactly know what's going on. You mentioned, and I heard, something about an injury, but it's not like she's in a cast or a walking, you know what I mean? It's not a compound fracture. It's not a tear. She might do some things next week. And she mentioned vulnerable. To me, I'm saying I think she was just scared, but it's so foreign to me that this particular athlete, who is just head and shoulders, like you said, about everybody else, would be scared. My personally, and I never played at a high level anything, but my conscience wouldn't even let me not do it. I'd rather collapse and do something stupid, at least trying like to hit against John Candelaria, than to say, no, I'm good. I don't want to embarrass myself today or whatever, or let my team down. I think, like you said, 75% of Simone Biles is 100% of others. And they, to leave a gold medal, not only just on the table, but for the Russians to take it home, like you said years ago. Yeah, so I honestly, without knowing everything, I'm kind of disappointed in what I saw, to be honest. Kind of disappointed in what I saw. But you don't know. Things might come out later, like you mentioned, Djokovic's injury, and sometimes there's injuries that aren't, made known, or something else is going on that, I'll pull back a little bit, but I just, on the surface, I just was like, what? What are you talking about? Go out and, give 70%, 75%. You're still going to get that gold. But, it is dangerous if there's something off and you're spinning up in the air and doing all these, you could get a serious injury. So, but just disappointed. What did you think about the other things going on in the Olympics? The U.S. basketball team, they dumped one to France and they've been okay since.
I think it was more of a wake-up call. France is good. They got Rudy Gobert,
France
a couple of other pros. They have Batum, I think. Batum has played well for them in that game as well.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a wake-up call that they needed. I wanted to take the 40 in Iran, but I found out later they were favored by 37-5. They won by 39, so the U.S. covered. Just kidding. But those are the point spreads. I think they'll be fine. The women's soccer team won in penalty kicks yesterday. Fortunate to beat the Netherlands, because the Netherlands had a penalty kick, and the U.S. goalie made a great save. So eventually, the U.S. won in. It's not overtime. They played 2 short overtimes, then they go to penalty kicks. Which I'm not sure, in the old days they play forever. Till somebody scored a goal and 11 days.
Yeah.
But right. And the swimmers are doing well. Ledecky is doing well, and the Drysdale guy is doing well. The U.S. as a whole is doing well, but I'm kind of with you now. To me, it's not quite what it used to be. We got to mention the COVID. Today I saw a thing: 246 positive cases connected directly with the Olympic Games. I'm guessing that's, athletes and maybe staff of certain countries. But almost more important, outside, they had 4,000 new positives this week, and that's a 217% increase over the previous week when the Olympics had barely started. So if there's 246 known positive cases, to me, there's 1,000 in the Olympics. And, I'm just extrapolating what the numbers are. And if there's 4,000, it's like when it was in the U.S., nobody was testing. So we had no idea how many there really were, but it was 5-10 times what we thought it was. It's probably similar there. And I saw one report where apparently the IOC said, there's really not much we can do. We're just plunging ahead. So that puts a damper to me on the whole thing as well. Bradley Beal didn't even come over here to play on the team because he tested positive. I don't know if he can come back now for the medal round, or I don't know anything about that. But it's this is like what we were talking about. Should they be playing the game? But back then in the U.S., there were 1,500, 2,000 people dying every day.
Yeah.
Which is a little different than what's going on now.
Right.
But I that puts a damper on it for me as well. But hey, I'll turn it on, especially if there's nothing else on. With the NBA over and the NHL over,
Yeah.
we do have baseball. But baseball still we're going into the dog days of August. So yeah, I watch the Olympics. I enjoy it. I root for the U.S. I'll be fascinated to see what Biles does. If she comes back for the last 2, it'll be even more interesting. But I have a sense if your mental health is that bad, for now it'll be what, a week or more? And you've opted out of everything, including 2 of the 4 individuals, one of which, maybe both of which she would have been a favorite, one of which apparently she couldn't lose. It'll be interesting, but I'd be surprised if she comes back. And this is going to start and already has started the national discussion on mental health, which I think is a good thing. But again, I don't know how this is going to affect millions of athletes, and I believe it will affect millions of athletes at all levels.
Interesting stuff, man, and great job as usual. We will check in with you again next week for next week's podcast in August. I'm going away, but I'll be back next Friday or Saturday, whenever we shoot. And you can check out Steve's work on daily on his Facebook forum page, Speaking of Sports with Steve Kallas. You can also check out his videos at WestchesterCountyPost.com on YouTube. This podcast is on YouTube and his Facebook forum page every week, as well as my Facebook forum page every week. You can follow me on Twitter at JoeStaszak975. Steve, great job again. And we'll catch up with you next week, pal.
Always a pleasure, Joe.
You too. Appreciate it, folks. Have a great week. Stay healthy. Enjoy the weather. Talk to you next week.